This is the VIP Podcast, Virginia in Politics. Let's listen to host Chris Saxman explore the personalities and policies that connect the Commonwealth. The VIP Podcast is brought to you by the VCTA, Broadband Association of Virginia, and Virginia Free. The views and opinions expressed here do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the VCTA and Virginia Free or our sponsors.
Good afternoon. This is Chris Saxman on the VIP Podcast, brought to you by Virginia Free, of which I am the executive director, and VCTA, the Broadband Association of Virginia. Those are the cable guys. We put this series of podcasts in collaboration with one another, and today our brand new VIP is Delegate Phillip Scott from the new 63rd District, correct, sir?
Yes, that will be the plan next year after I run for re-election and win in November.
Okay, so you're currently on, I believe, in the old 88th, is that right?
Yeah, currently the 88th, correct, yes.
That's my former classmate, Mark Cole.
Wonderful man.
Yes, good man. And so what got you into running for the House of Delegates, Philip? Is it Philip or Phil? What are we going to do?
Either one. Phil is fine. That's a little bit less formal, and so definitely
which do you prefer? Is it Philip? I had an Uncle Philip, so you know.
It doesn't matter. We can go with Phil on this and make it a little bit less formal.
How about Delegate Scott? Delegate Scott, why did you decide to run for the House of Delegates? Let's make it easier for everybody.
All right, so I have 5 daughters, and a few years ago it was only 1 and then 3. I have a set of twins. And I wanted to make sure that I was going to do everything that I could to make sure that I was protecting their future. And so I started getting involved with my local party. I ran for school board a couple of years ago because my kids are school age and involved in the school system. And I wanted to make sure that I was being an advocate for them and making sure that I was an advocate, not just for my children, but for all kids and all parents.
Sure.
When I was running for school board, in June of 2019, we found out that my 4th daughter that we were expecting to be born had some markers for a chromosome abnormality called trisomy 18 or Edwards syndrome. And then after further tests, we discovered that she did test positive for that. And we were told that she was only going to live for a few months to few moments to a few hours. Wow. And so we put us through a whirlwind.
Sure.
And even now, when I try to recall all this, right, my mind is just all jumbled up, just because the emotions come back.
Sure.
And we delivered her via C-section at 34 weeks at the beginning of September 2019, right as campaign season was starting to kick off for school board. Wow. She lived a lot longer than a few moments to a few hours. She's almost 3 years old today. So that's jump forward to the happy story, right?
Wow.
But during that time, she had to go up to Children's National in DC for a surgery to connect her stomach and her esophagus. And she spent 74 days in the NICU up there. And needless to say, it's hard to run a school board race from DC when, the locality is like an hour and a half away. And I didn't win in that November, but I stayed plugged in with my local committee. I stayed engaged with my local community, got appointed to various boards and in my area. I've served on the board of directors for my subdivision, continue to be involved. And people saw that. And they saw that a candidate who lost an election did not stop them or stop him from continuing to engage and work for the betterment of the community. Okay. And then I was, working closely with Delegate Mark Cole, or former Delegate Mark Cole at this point, and he recognized that dedication. And when he decided to step down, he and I had a phone call, and he said, "Hey, I'm looking to step down, and it's time for me to hand the baton off to." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Who are you thinking about handing the baton off to? I'll get behind them and support them." And he was like, "Well, I haven't given much thought, but you're the first person to come to mind."
Wow.
So
that's gotta be praised because Mark Cole does not show his hand at all, ever. That guy is like the complete poker face of all time.
Yeah. So it gave pause. I met up with him. He shared the time commitments that were going to go into this, and everything that we had going on with Brianna. I mean, she had just recovered from heart surgery. And so all these different things, and we have young kids. My wife was pregnant with our 5th, and we were like, maybe it's not the right time. But then I had other calls from other folks saying, "Phil, now is the time to step up. This is your moment, and I want you to step up. I want you to either represent me, or I want to work alongside you in the House." And so my wife and I prayed about it. We asked God for some very specific signs. He answered and made those signs clear, and then ran in a very tough 3-person primary won that, and then worked hard to make sure that I didn't slow down going into November, and won in November. And so that's kind of the quick overall.
Yeah, no, that's it's worthy of recounting that that storyline, because I think so often in politics we lose sight of the why.
Yeah,
the why is very important. Your initial why was incredibly powerful, not dissimilar to mine 20 some odd years ago when I jumped in. But like you, I was also asked, and it's kind of a weird thing, and I don't really aspire or ascribe to that notion of, well, my friends told me I should run, that whole line. But in the reality was, in my situation, I was asked, and I think it's a powerful moment, especially when someone like Mark Cole, who was, the guy in that district for 20 years, basically, right. I wouldn't say handpicks you, but he went to you first, right? And that's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, and it was. And the way that I view public service is, everybody can go after something. Anybody can just say, hey, I want this, or I think I'm the best. But right. What we should be doing is for those of us that are in there, we should be following the Mark Cole example and saying, this person has the servant's heart. This person is getting in the trenches. This person is working hard. And this is the caliber of person that we need in Richmond or in DC. And that way we can make sure that we're going to find people that are focused on the people and not an agenda or not a career, but really serving for the common good.
And your new district, how much of the 63rd is the old 88th?
Very small amount of it. So yeah, right now I only have like northern Spotsylvania that's part of the new 63rd. And so that's going to continue over, okay. But I'm losing Stafford, I'm losing Fred City, and I'm losing Fauquier. But I'm gaining all of Western Spotsylvania, and I'm gaining Eastern Orange is kind of the new makeup of the new district there. And
any competition from within your party at this point?
To my knowledge, no. I'm going to be running for re-election, and Lord willing, have no primary and be able to focus on helping other candidates get across the finish line next year.
Because there's been a series of district changes north and west of you. Does that impact you at all, or are you apprised of that with the Freitas, Webert, and LaRock triumvirate discussion?
So Nick Freitas and I, Delegate Freitas and I, are good friends, and he and I have had a few conversations, and Delegate Webert and I are good friends, and we've had a few conversations, and I kind of knew what the plans were from their perspective, and kind of seeing how things were going to go with the congressional primary for the 7th district. And that was kind of all unfold after that to see where that went. But as far as any of that, it did not impact me whatsoever. I was districted into a new district all by myself. Okay. And so there was no need for me to move into a new district, no need for me to, encourage somebody to move out or anything like that. So I really did win the lottery, so to speak, in the redistricting.
Well, not too many people can say that. And if they do, they're typically quiet about it because they don't want to be someone will bludgeon them later in the legislature. But anyway, let's talk about the new district, your plans. You obviously run for re-election. What's going on in the new 63rd? What are you seeing on the ground? What issues are important to people right now?
I mean, it's kind of the same thing that got Youngkin across the finish line. It's education, right? Parents want to make sure they're being able to engage with the local school boards. They want to make sure they're having a say as to what's being taught, what type of materials being presented or made available to their students. We need to make sure that we're just supporting the parents in this, right? Like I said, I ran and got involved as a parent because I wanted to make a difference for my kids. And so I can connect with these other parents that have these either similar viewpoints as mine or even different viewpoints as mine. Because at the end of the day, all parents want what they think is best for their children. And we need to make sure that we are empowering the parent, engaging the parent so that they know they have an active voice.
And are people with me? It was, I was watching the debate with my wife, the now famous debate in Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce, and I missed it when McAuliffe said what he said, and my wife went, "Oh, that's a problem." And she's not very politically oriented. I'm like, "Why? What happened? What did I miss here?" And she basically said that parents who've been educating their kids for the last 2 years don't matter in the conversation. I was like, "Oh, that's going to be a problem." So.
And the answer to this, right, there's really one very complicated answer for this. And it's not a simple answer, but it's very complicated when it comes to legislation. and carrying it through is total universal school choice. And I had submitted a great, robust school choice package last year.
Okay.
Didn't make it out of committee, but we're going to be resubmitting that same bill this year because we really need to further that conversation. And it's the answer to just about every single problem that a parent has. If a parent believes, schools should have mask mandates, they can take their state dollars and go to a school that has a mask mandate. If they think their kids shouldn't have to wear a mask, they can take their state dollars and go to a school that doesn't have that. Or if they believe that certain materials shouldn't be made available to kids, it's the real answer for all this. And then it also gives an opportunity for folks in some of the tougher areas to get access to education they normally wouldn't have access to. And so we're going to continue that conversation of school choice going into this next legislative session, because I think that's really what parents ultimately need to give them the most power and control when it comes to their own children.
Yeah, that's you're plucking my heartstrings on that one, because I carried the first school choice bill in 2003, and it eventually passed. I got out of the House that year and then over to the Senate, and it just languished for years in the Senate. And finally, after Bob McDonnell was elected, we got it passed and signed into law. Jimmy Massey carried it. So it's definitely, and one of the things that I often talked about was the you can send, this is a great talking point, by the way, for you on this stuff. Constitutionally, you can send state dollars to private religious schools in pre-K, and you can do it post-graduation and from high school for college education, but you can't do it from K through 12. And I think that's wrong. And I think parents recognize you can have school choice for pre-K, and you can have school choice, universal school choice for higher education. We have the best higher education systems in the world, because that's the way we do it. We don't cordon off kids by geography and zip code for higher education, and yet we somehow take this as the way things are and always will be for K through 12.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And
I know I'm absolutely right. I just want people to listen. I've been right for a long time, Philip.
That's right. And there's a reason why I'm here today, right?
Look, I chop it up with folks, but for the most part, we have a civil, engaging conversation about policies. And when I agree with them, I'm going to let them know. And if they're out of bounds, I go, maybe not today. I won't tamp on them too much or get in too much of a contest with them. That's just not what this podcast is all about. This is just a podcast all about getting to know y'all better, the senators and the delegates, and then some congressional folks as well. We've done some congressional candidates, but let's do a little bit deeper dive into Delegate Phillip Scott. We'll take a bit of a break here from policy and the personal reasons why you ran for office, and tell us a little bit more about yourself. What are your favorite TV shows?
TV shows. So my wife and I, for the longest time, we watched This Is Us, mostly through Hulu, because we don't have the freedom and flexibility of just, dropping all things when a certain TV show comes on, because with Brianna, during the evening, there's a lot of different cares that have to be done with her, and that kind of eats up an evening. And then after a night nurse shows up, if we're lucky enough to have a night nurse, then we'll sit on the couch and kind of, browse through Hulu or whatnot. But I'm really not a TV guy. I really don't watch a whole lot of TV. Instead, I dabble with hobbies and activities. Okay. I like woodworking. I like getting out into the shed and building stuff with my hands. We put an addition on our house. I spent over 10 years in residential construction. I've got my contractor's license. And so I used to run a contractor's business. And it's still active. The business is still active. The contractor's license is still active in case I ever wanted to get that going again. And so I put the addition on our house. It was a 1.5 car garage with a bonus room above it. Did 95% of the work myself or with family help, and did that, just a bunch of different things. But I really like just getting out and getting into the garage and tinkering, building something with wood. And so I've built benches for the house. I built a little entry bench and coat hanger. I've built shelves for Brianna's room. I've just about every room of the house has something that I built in it. And so that's kind of what I do with my time. So just a variety of different things like that.
That's great. This is one of the reasons why I ask these questions, is you get so much insight into other people, because, we get locked into our Republican, Democrat, red versus blue, conservative, liberal, progressive, whatever it is. And you really miss the person. Favorite movies of all time? What do you think?
So I'm a big Batman fan. I love
Really?
just the character of Batman. He's my favorite superhero, and so I'd have to say the Batman Begins, Dark Knight, and all that trilogy there.
Okay.
By Christopher Nolan. So I would have to say that trilogy. Yeah.
Okay. I guess we'll go into books now. Favorite books? What do you look back on and go, yep, that's one I'd read again?
First and foremost, always is going to be the Bible. The first one that I would answer. But right now, I'm going through working on a PhD in public policy, so I'm reading a ton of really great books. And so, as far as a reference book that I love to always have on hand is the Heritage Guide to the Constitution, because it's just a great resource, and it's a good book to have on hand when a question comes up about policy or Supreme Court ruling, just to kind of dive in a little bit deeper and see what's going on.
Now,
book that I'm currently reading.
Obviously, the Bible is a series of books, wonderful stories. One way to get people to read the Bible is to try to ban it from schools because it's too pornographic or violent, or
There you go.
The kids be like, "What do you mean? There's sex in this and there's violence? I should read this." You got to think. We got to turn that around, that whole narrative. So, in the Bible, what are your favorite books?
The Book of James. I really enjoy the Book of James. I think it's a great book for practical living, especially in a modern era. And so that's one that I try to hold to. My favorite verse comes from Book of Jeremiah, which God commanded the nation of Israel to engage in public activity for the betterment of Babylon. And in doing so, they too would prosper. So I've taken that, prosper the city, for in doing so, you too may prosper, as a personal call to get involved in, like, my property owners association, county board, delegate. It's kind of that personal call for me to continue to better the society that I'm in and make it so that all people can prosper. And in doing so, I too will prosper along with you and everybody else.
So was that like the verse you came back to when you decided to run? Was that like okay.
Yeah, it's kind of been the driving force ever since I came across it years ago. You got to keep pushing forward. You got to keep, if you keep this bigger idea of, why am I doing this? I'm doing this for my kids, or I'm doing this for society, or I'm doing this so that others may benefit, right? When I ran for school board, not just for me as a parent, but for other parents, because in doing so, we all will reap the benefits of a better society.
Very good. Favorite college sports teams, college sports? Do you lean anywhere in there?
Not a big fan of college sports. I really don't track that. I mean, I'm, graduate of Liberty University, and so I root for them. But
they've got some good football and basketball teams lately. They're doing real well.
They're doing really good, and they've come a long way. My mom's mom, my grandmother, is from Alabama, and so my mom roots for Alabama football. So
right. How about pro side? Anything there?
From South Jersey, so Philadelphia all the way, the Eagles, 76ers, the Phillies. Yep.
Okay, yeah, that's we used to have this song in college. We used to, I won't bore you. What the hell? I'll tell the story. We played the 76ers song, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 76ers. And when that song came on at our fraternity, we'd go underneath people and throw them up on our shoulders, and we'd all dance like double stack. The 76ers song. I'll send you the version of it. It's just one of those stupid things we did in the 80s.
Sure, absolutely.
So how did you get from South Jersey to Liberty? What's that story?
All right, so from South Jersey, my dad was out of work after my younger brother passed away after 2.5 weeks. And then a friend of his got him a job up in Maine, and I was 3 years old when that happened. And so we moved to Maine. And then after my mom got remarried, my stepfather was in the computer industry and moved us to Virginia because it was a better market for computer programmers down here. And so I've been down in Virginia ever since I was 14 and have made Virginia my home. And when I was 18, I went to Liberty University in person. But I was not quite ready to be on my own and engaging in college life. And so I only did one semester there. And then I came back home, got involved with work and, engaging in the business, realm of side of things and professional side of things, worked, Wawa, Books a Million, a variety of different places, ended up at Jabs Construction out at Dumfries, and then went back to Liberty University online after going to 2 years of Bible school. And that's kind of how I finished my degree, my bachelor's degree, my 2 master's degrees, and my PhD right now is all through Liberty University online.
That's fantastic. Good for you. That's awesome. I love those stories because it's a wonderful story of, perseverance, keep striving. And, this is what happens. I was talking to one of our board members, Virginia Free, over the weekend, and I never knew his story. He was a very successful business guy, has, well over 1,000 employees. And, he didn't think about going to college. He was up in, I think, Mount Vernon area of Northern Virginia. And someone said, well, you should go to Northern Virginia College. It's a community college. They'll take anybody. He was like, okay. So, he's got a real soft spot. He just wasn't that guy coming out of high school, right? And he's got this really massive, successful business right now. And, it's also, his different perspective on life. And I just think those are wonderful, non-traditional routes that I think make it all so interesting. And that's why we ask those questions. I think people kind of go, yeah, I can relate to that story. There's a great quote by Steve Jobs that the storyteller is the most powerful person on earth, and it's the stories of the Bible, right? Those are all anecdotes. And as you said, the book of James is a relevant guide for living today. Those are the ones people go, oh, okay, that's different. I learned something from that. What are you looking forward to in the upcoming General Assembly session?
As I already mentioned, the school choice bill. That one's
what are we looking at? We've got two very close splits in the House and the Senate. Short session because everyone's going to be running for a re-election, and a lot of people running against each other. Big popcorn this year.
So say that again. You just broke up for a second.
A lot of popcorn this year in the General Assembly.
Yeah. So another bill that I'm really excited about is my medical license reciprocity bill that got carried over from last year. Just like every other industry out there, there's a need for positions to be filled, vacancies to be filled. And we're trying to work with, the regulatory board. It's in different states, surrounding Virginia, to kind of figure out what we can do to streamline the medical license reciprocity process. We have licensure by endorsement for a variety of different fields, but we want to expand that. We want to make it more robust and make it easier for a doctor who might be in Maryland to be able to practice in Virginia, and also at the same time to be subject to the regulatory board. And I hate using the word subject, right? Because it has a weird connotation.
It is what it is. I mean, you have to adhere to the regulations.
Yeah, adhere to the regulations. And so make sure that, we're protecting our citizens, right? We don't want some rogue doctor coming in and doing some crazy stuff that's not good and beneficial to the people. And so one of the challenges is getting a good communication between regulatory boards. If there's a doctor in another state that's undergoing investigation, what can and cannot be shared, and kind of creating those channels of communication. So we're actively engaged in those conversations.
Well, those border localities really do need that flexibility of attracting people, because they'll bounce back and forth across the borders there, and to have that flexibility of reciprocity would be very helpful. What's the pushback? Well, what's the pushback on your first bill in school choice and the education committee? Is it just like it wasn't the right time? We're going to wait till this year? What's the story?
So there was a few things. One of the things was the financial impact statement. I think we only submitted a $5 million financial impact when it's really like $50 million. And so we're just going to have to come back to that and figure out where we can kind of get money from the budget to help that out. And then it's just I didn't do a good job. I was freshman delegate. It was a big carry, and so I didn't get the messaging out there. So
I had dinner with a bunch of lobbyists last night, and we were talking. I forget how it came up. So I think I might have mentioned to my wife or one of the spouses that was there. I said, when a delegate puts their own bill in, when a legislator puts his own bill in, they don't really have too much of a chance because no one's working the bill. You got to really work the bill. And lobby for it. You just can't show them committee and go, oh, I'm Delegate Scott, this is my bill. They're going to go next. You don't have time for this. That's just the nature of the beast. Some people don't quite understand on the outside looking in. What about the reciprocity bill? What happened there?
So there was just some pushback because the wording wasn't right. We had a couple of different versions of it. And at the end of the day, there were some other pieces of legislation that were passed that kind of overlapped with what I was doing. So we carried it over to 2023 so that we can kind of see what did get finalized last year. How can we rewrite this to make it actually do something as opposed to just duplicating something that is in another bill? And then we also have one we're going to be following up on that's, I think, very important. It was a study bill last year for Department of Medical Assistance Services to come up with a way for there to be direct purchase of different supplies or medical medicines or other medical devices that somebody who's on Medicaid or Medicare might need, that they can purchase. My daughter, she has a G tube, and she gets fed through a feeding pump, and she gets formula that can be bought over the counter, and Medicaid covers it because it's prescribed by the doctor. Well, there's a huge markup when it comes through the supply company as opposed to going directly to even a retailer. And so it was like 3 or 4 times the amount of a canister of formula that we could have purchased at Walmart that Medicaid was getting billed by the supplier, because they have to bring it into their warehouse. They got to pay all their overhead on doing something multiple times. And so we've got this bill in place so that we can hopefully save millions of dollars of Medicaid expenses by giving the parent the ability to directly purchase. It would be very similar to an EBD card. And coming out of a formula shortage like we just did, if a supply company doesn't have it, but you can go online and maybe find it on Amazon or another supplier and get it, we should be empowering parents to be able to take care of their kids or take care of their own medical needs that Medicaid or Medicare covers.
Yeah, these are issues that when you pull back the veneer of the daily dialogue of politics, conservative, liberal, that you talk about, like, wow, these guys really do care, and they really do work on issues that impact us. And it doesn't fit the narrative that so many in the media, I mean, even back 20 years ago, and I hate to keep going saying these are all the stories from back in the day, but some of these stories just don't go away. I'd go home and people are like, all y'all do is talk about guns and abortion. I'm like, no, we really don't. We talk about that maybe 1-2% of the time. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, we have a lot of bills. We have 2,000 bills. We don't talk about these things. We talk about other things. That's what's just reported in the papers. That's what y'all read. The reality is that we're working on really tough, difficult issues and trying to make people's lives better. So good on you for stepping in the breach there on education and health issues. What committees are you on, Philip?
I'm on health, welfare institutions,
there you go.
County, cities, and towns, and privileges and elections.
Oof. Woof. Well, you got one.
I wanted health, welfare institutions because I'm very passionate about the health industry.
P&E and county, cities, and towns,
I wanted
that's like drilling a live tooth, man. I'm telling you, that's a hellacious Friday right there.
I enjoy P&E. I wanted that because I had a lot of great ideas because in everybody's mind, their ideas are always the best on election reform. And I wanted to be part of that process. And then, I guess I got luck of the draw with county, cities, and towns and got put on that one.
That's really lucky. So, obviously your predecessor chaired P&E for a number of years.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And that was another reason why I wanted to be on it, was continue that legacy.
Good. Yeah, that's a unique committee. I'll say that. It's a unique committee. Well, Delegate Phillip Scott, we wish you the very best of luck here on the VIP podcast. Virginia Free is nonpartisan, as you know, and VCTA has brought to you this podcast, an opportunity. It'll be out when we get this all taped up and ready for ship. It'll go out on YouTube and Spotify and Apple. So if you're out there in the world of podcasting, subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. Please like, subscribe, and share as you do. And Delegate Phillip Scott, we wish you the very best this summer, and to your wonderful family and your daughter. Thank you for sharing that story. And the rest of what you're working on. We wish you the very best.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Take care.